Hello, everyone.
Okay, so, welcome to my unscripted opinion of Scarlet Nexus. Now, the only semblance of structure you'll get is I'm going to be taking a look at the notes that I took while playing the game. It looks like I split them up into like good and bad, but at the same time, it looks very mixed up, so I guess we'll just get right into it and see exactly what's going on here. So the very first thing on my list is that I went into it knowing nothing and expecting it to be like Code Vein, which is completely true and right to the point. And I don't really have much other anything else to say about that. Now, if we keep going along here, it starts with the good and then goes on to the bad. So we'll just go from top to bottom. My very first bullet point here in the good section is that the music in the city was pretty nice. After playing and beating the game, I fully agree with this statement. I never got tired of it. The second bullet point here is exploring is fun. I found plenty by just roaming around the city, which is true, obviously, kind of. There are plenty of items lying around, but they're not super important and you can just buy them from the shop. So I really just kind of ignored some of them, but if I saw it, I went to try and get it. The third bullet point here in the good section is I enjoyed the loot system. It's quick and doesn't get in the way, letting you focus on the game so you can hack and slash whilst obtaining a nice portion of loot. This I completely agree with, fully going through it. I never found it to be like ever in the way, and it was really quick and I didn't really have to keep track of it too much. So that was nice. The fourth bullet point here is the finishing moves are smooth and fun to pull off. As a fan of animations, I really enjoy watching them. I think I enjoyed watching them a little too much because I would try to do them as much as possible. Bullet point here is I had a lot of fun when the boss fights started to ramp up in difficulty, which is true. The beginning boss fights are rather gimmicky and not very difficult, so I can understand a jump in difficulty being enjoyable. I don't exactly remember writing these notes down, so what you get is what you get. Wow, the fifth bullet point is great. There are a lot of fun moments in this game, and I don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't played it. Amazing. So just so you know, the game is fun. The sixth bullet point is even better. I liked riding the bus. Now, there's only one place in the game that you can do this, and I'll show it to you now. Pretty fun, right? Yeah, I agree. And the last and final bullet point on the good section of these notes is the bonding episodes were nice between missions and helped me get closer to the characters. I tried to do every Bond episode that I possibly could, and I got really attached to the different characters and how they were growing and proceeding in the story. I got really attached to learning what the lore was behind everything and just listening to the story in general, even among little details that would seem insignificant in the actual storyline of the game. But it was fun learning about them. Now we move on to the bad section of the notes. The first bullet point on this section is, at first I didn't like how the character felt to control. There was a slight curve where I didn't like how the character felt with the camera, but in the end, I ended up liking it, especially when dashing around different maps and stuff. Turning around corners while dashing just felt cool. The second bullet point in the bad section is, I kinda wish all the cutscenes were animated, but it does go with the style of the game, but some of them are, so it's fine. I do wish more of them were animated, but in the end, knowing all the story and lore and stuff, the way they did their cutscenes makes complete sense, and looking back at it, I really enjoyed that they decided to do that. The third bullet point on the bad section is I was slightly disappointed by the first boss. I expected it to be a real fight, like a Dark Souls boss or a Code Vein boss, but it was just a gimmick fight, and this was my experience with it. Yeah, the first boss is, so difficult. Like, I had such a hard time just getting through it. The next bullet point of the bad section is, there are portions of the story that will have you go through the same areas again, but part of a different mission that are not optional, such as the unforgettable mission of finding the fountain pen that was lost in the first area for some reason. This I never really got over. Like, I was able to move through it, but it felt kind of sluggish to have to backtrack through these areas to find something kind of pointless. But in the end, future me, knowing that that was actually a Bond episode and that I am big smooth brain for putting this in my notes, I like that Bond episode, and I like the ones after that as well. So, past me, you're a big haha smooth brain. Get it? So, this next issue on the bad list, I actually kind of never got over. I don't know if it's a feature. I don't know if it's just how the game was made. When locked onto an enemy and you attack, your character's moves don't tend to be towards the enemy. The camera is the only thing that seems to target the enemy, which makes it a little difficult to have to deal with in a fight. I felt myself slightly wrestling with the camera and the character in fights a lot of times, and I would quite often miss the enemy because of this. I don't know if it's a feature because their weak points could be literally anywhere on their body. Like, sometimes they're just in weird places, and it could help you get to those. But I found it to be slightly annoying and would have preferred a more Dark Souls or Code Vein-esque lock-on system. But that's probably just what I was used to, because I don't play a lot of, I guess, what you would call beat-em-ups. So having loads of hours in Dark Souls and everything else, I was more used to that lock-on system. So I can see why I would have an issue with it, even if it was by design. The next two bullet points I don't really agree with. The bulk of my gameplay consisted of spamming X and Y and RT until the enemy died. Not the most riveting or complex gameplay. Which, yeah, it's not riveting or complex because it's a hack and slash, anime kill the thing, right? You can turn off your brain and enjoy yourself. But I guess past me, when writing this bullet point, felt that it was important to say. So yeah, if you were expecting something different, which I was, you may run into this issue. The next bullet point is, I don't like that most of the boss fights were gimmick based. Now this could just me be wanting Dark Souls-esque bosses, but future me now, I kinda like that they were gimmick based, because it, I guess, allowed for more focus on the details of the story. Basically let myself enjoy the game and focus on the enjoyment part instead of having to see what the boss's moves were and everything like that. Now, I have an overall section to these notes that I'm gonna go over and read, but I have no idea if I agree with them because I don't remember them. So let's see what they are, shall we? Overall, it's a fun experience, especially if you like anime games with flashy moves, slight jank to its control scheme, a cast of colorful yet stereotypical anime personalities, and minimal difficulty. If you've been playing anime RPGs for a while, like I have, you're prepared for all these things. All in all, it turned out to be your average anime RPG, and that isn't a bad thing. It could have been a lot worse, and hey, having fun is the main objective, and with this game, there is some enjoyment to be had. So this overall kind of part in my notes, I don't really agree with, because playing through the game, I found that in comparison to all the other anime games that I've played throughout the years, this game has a lot of polish that most anime games don't have. And the only issue I had, which was with the lock-on system, I think it's by design, which means, seeing as I didn't run into any other issues, except for my expectations being completely wrong, the game was fun. It had lots of polish, and it's a fun game to just sit back, relax, and hack up some monsters while listening to a good story. These stereotypical anime personalities, though, I do agree with, but they do round off their characters and branch them off more from that stereotypical personalities of theirs, with the Bond episodes that I mentioned before. And even though they were slightly stereotypical, I got really attached to them, and I really enjoyed every Bond episode and everything that involved their characters and their growth. What I liked most was going through the story and going through and seeing all the Bond episodes. So my original statement here, which I don't remember when I said it or when I even wrote it down in my notes here, is wrong, and I don't agree with it. So there is one last section to my notes. Let's see what it is. It's a bullet point, but it's kind of long. The story is predictable and very stereotypical, but it was enjoyable to go through, and that was my favorite part. Listening to the lore and seeing where the story went, the gameplay is the thing that drags the game down. Super repetitive and doesn't evolve much from the very point you start playing. For me, after the 4th or 5th phase in the story, the gameplay was stale to me, and I found myself trying to get through the slog of repetitive, forced, gimmicky combat gameplay to get to the actual story to see what happens next. Now, while playing the game, what I ran into, this issue right here, was I became impatient because I wanted to see what happens next, and I turned my brain on. Now, this game, you really shouldn't do that. You're supposed to relax and kind of turn your brain off and hack and slash and listen to the story. But I turned my brain on, which I shouldn't have, and I over-examined it too much. I remember when I wrote this down, so I usually go through 3 phases when going through a game. The first phase is where I'm taking everything at face value, which is when I wrote down that the city music was good, or that I liked riding the bus. I'm taking everything point blank and what it should be. The second phase I usually go through is the dissecting phase, which can generally be looked at by an outside perspective as negative, but for me it's not. I'm dissecting the game, going through and picking out every little detail I can. What the gameplay is like, how the system works, all the functions within it. I'm dissecting it, going through it, and learning, essentially, everything that I can. And sometimes, a lot of the times, that can be viewed as negative by my friends or anyone who listens to me, because it just sounds like I'm complaining, when really I'm just kind of putting everything on the table with a very critical look on it, because I'm trying to pinpoint and find every detail. And the final phase is when I put everything back together and enjoy the game for what it is. I know everything within it because I dissected it. I took it at face value and learned what it was in the beginning. And now that I know everything that it is and everything that it ever will be, I fully enjoy the game and I start making my opinion. Now, of course, I can start to dislike a game. It is my opinion after all. Everybody has them. You're free to dislike and like as you go. But the third phase is where I start building my opinion and my outlook on whatever it is. Be it a game or a movie, even a food. Literally everything in my life kind of goes through these 3 phases, including my friends. So, knowing this, I guess you kind of now have your expectation of what my content's going to be like. But now that we've gone through my notes and the bullet points, I guess I should put my own opinion to it, and I guess make an ending phrase. So after going through playing the game, going through all of my 3 phases, what do I think now? What's my opinion? Honestly, I think it's a good game. It stands well on its own, has lots of polish, and I didn't really run into any issues. I really enjoyed the game, and I think lots of other people will too. Especially if you're a fan of just anime games in general. You can expect a lot of jank and whatever to many other anime games, but the ones with polish, they tend to stand out because they don't have all that jank. They've been polished and refined for your enjoyment, and I believe that this is one of those games. So for me, I really enjoyed this game, and I'm happy you came around and sat here and listened to my opinion on it. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye, guys.